Okay, let me answer these ones from Thursday, and then we will wrap up. I'll do the second part of that second step. I told you that second step I stopped before I added on the other part of it. So we'll do that, and that way we'll be ready to go with integers. So first off, this one here, this is a positive number. See, there's a invisible plus sign. Remember, if there's not a negative, there's a plus sign. So that is a positive 36 and a negative 58. Okay, that if I going back to just having to rewire our brains to look at that, this is, if I cover up this number for right now, even if you want to call this an operation of subtraction, I'm going to cover that up, and that's just a positive 36. Then if I take that and cover that up, then it's a negative 58. So I've got a positive number and a negative number, which means you go out here to the side, you subtract them, and then you put the sign of the bigger number. Which one's the bigger number? This one is, so it's a negative 22. Okay? Well, like I said, if you keep doing it and following this step exactly, it will become a little bit more natural. Okay? Now, this case, they're flipped. This is the negative number, and this is the positive number. So you still do the same thing, though. They're one apiece. So I'm going to go out here and subtract them. And the bigger number in this case is positive, so it's a positive 30. Okay. Now, let's do this one, positive and a negative. So subtract them. Okay, and I get 39. And then the bigger number is negative, so it's a negative 39. Okay, got a negative and a positive, so it's one apiece, so you go out here and subtract them. And the bigger number is positive, so it's positive. You see, I'm just doing the same thing every time. Now this one, we've got a double sign, so that's the first thing I need to do, is change the double sign. Since they're one apiece, it becomes a negative. Now I can look and say, okay, no more double signs. I got a positive number, a negative number, so I'm going to subtract the two. The bigger number is negative, so it's a negative 48. Okay. Same thing here, we got a double sign. Now this isn't a double sign. There's no two signs here, but there is right here. They're both negative, so that's going to become a positive. So it becomes a negative 3 plus 20. Now another way to look at it is cover this up. It's a negative 3. Cover this up. It's a positive 20. So it's one apiece, which means you go out here and subtract them. And the bigger number is positive, so it's a positive 17. Okay. Positive, negative. Go out here and subtract them. Bigger number is negative, so it's negative 10. Okay. Okay, double sign. You got to take care of that first. Okay, now we got a negative and a positive. So we subtract them. And the bigger number is positive. Okay, positive, negative. So no matter how big they get, you follow that same pattern. Okay. Okay, the bigger number is negative. So it's negative. And see, the rewiring of the brain kind of part comes in that I went off to the side, and even though the negative number is the 327, I'm always going to subtract the smaller from the bigger out here to the side. Then I can decide, well, is it negative or is it positive? And in this case, the bigger number is negative. Okay. Now, the best thing to do right here is still do the first step first. So you could go through and change this to a positive, okay, because I got to get rid of my double sign. Then I could go one at a time. Okay, that'd probably be the best order. You don't have to. You could have done this first before you changed the double sign yet and just worked with 17 minus 28. But now let's do 17 minus 28. Got a positive and a negative. So I'm going to go out here and subtract them. You get 11. Bigger number's negative. And then you still have your plus 13 here. Okay, I've not done anything with that. I just did this first. Now, we got a negative and a positive, so I'm going to go out here and subtract those. Get 2. And the bigger number's positive, so it's a positive 2. Okay, so just follow that pattern, and you got, now, these were all ones that had a positive and a negative. Some of them had double signs that we had to change first, but then it was a negative and a positive, one of each. That other part of the second step I want to look at is, well, what if they're both of the same sign? So, these are all, these ones that I had to do and I didn't add on anymore, was one of them being positive, one of them being negative. So you went out here and subtracted. One of them being positive, one of them being negative. So you went out here and subtracted. They were all that way. This one, if you look, they're both positive. It's the invisible plus sign. You got a plus sign here. So they're both positive. Now, when we see a problem like this, we've learned from elementary, we just add them together. Okay, so, 27 plus 36, I add them together, and I get 63, and I'm done. We've learned that since grade school. But where I want to show that this fits into what, these steps are is, first step, just to recap, is change your double signs. I don't know why my camera, I apologize, sometimes it's going in and out of just focus, but hopefully. So the first step is double signs. That's never going to change. Go through and change your double signs. No double signs there. Okay, then the second step is, go through, if one of them's positive, one of them negative, then you subtract them and keep the bigger sign and so on. But what happens if they're both positive? Okay, well, we just added them. We didn't subtract the numbers. We just added them. Okay, and if you notice, they're both positive. The whole thing stays positive. Okay, it's a positive 63. Okay, so let's do it again. We add them together. Instead, we're not subtracting them. The second part of this is if the signs are the same, we're going to add them. So we add them together and we get 14. And then you keep the sign the same. On this part of it, if you remember from Thursday, we subtracted them and then we kept the sign of the bigger number. Well, this one, they're both the same sign, so you're not choosing, you're just keeping them the same. So you add, the big difference is, though, we add them, not subtract them, we add them, and then we keep the sign the same. It's a positive 14. And you say, well, why are we even learning this? We know 12 plus 2 is 14. Well, here's the different one. This case, we have 2 negatives. Okay, 2 negatives. Now, if you think about it and you're on the number line, you're starting down here at negative 13, and then you're going 22 more negative. You are actually doing the same thing that you're doing here. You're starting and then you're adding. What you're going to do to these two numbers is, okay, so this was the one from Thursday. This is the one from today. If the signs are the same, meaning they're both positive, you add them. If they're both negative, you add them. Okay, so here's 2 negatives. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to add them together. Okay, and you keep the sign the same. In this case, they're negative, so it's negative 35. If you think about it, if you had negative $13 and you bought another 22, now you're 35 in the hole. That's why you add those two numbers together. Okay, this one's a little bit easier to see. You have negative 3 and you go 12 more in the hole. You're going to add those two numbers together, and the sign stays the same. Okay, so that's the last part of this two-step process. Double signs, that's first step. Second step is if they're one of each, you subtract them, keep the sign of the bigger one. If they're the same, either both positive, both negative, you add them and keep the sign the same. So let's go through and do a couple that are double signs and the second part of this step. So first off, double sign. This is a negative 3 now. Okay, now if you look, I've got a negative and a negative. So I'm going to go out here and add them and keep the sign the same. Okay, let's look at this one. -5, double sign. So you're going to change it. Now, here's one that's negative and one that's positive. That's not like this one where they're both negative. So you go out here and subtract them. Okay, I wanted to put one like we did on Thursday. Okay, and then you put the sign of the bigger number. Okay, so that's kind of a, what you can start seeing now is they're going to be one or the other. Okay, so that's where you have to start putting all these rules into place. Okay, now here is the ones I want you to do. Okay, so if you look, there's some like Thursday. Okay, there's like some from Thursday. There's some from today where they're both negative. Okay, then you've got some double signs that you got to change first and then decide. Do they fall into where the signs are different and I subtract them? Or are the signs going to end up be the same and I add them? Okay, so they're going to fall into one of these kind of subcategories here. So I'll put the problems back up there, and if you need to pause them and write them down, that's the problems that I want you to do for today's assignment. We are wrapping up as far as what we're going to do on our first unit test, doing all of these now put together. Now, we are only focusing on adding and subtracting right now. Once we take this first unit test, we are going to move into multiplying and dividing. And I promise you, actually, multiplying and dividing is actually easier. The rules are easier to keep track of. They're very simple. This one's, like I said, you've got the kind of jumps back and forth, and you've got them being double signs. So there's a little work involved with these. But anyway, these 6 I want you to do, and we'll check them, and then we'll start into your study guide and your first unit test. Okay? Thanks, guys.